Okay, good morning, everybody. To our guests that are here with us today, as well as our esteemed presenters. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the Cybersecurity School's alumni event. This is specifically the Indo-Dutch Cybersecurity School event, which is being run, we're coming in as a partner of the South Africa-Netherlands Cybersecurity School, and I see quite a few South African guests here this morning as well, so I'd like to thank you for joining. What we're going to do today is we're going to be discussing quite a few issues in this panel discussion. We're going to be focusing on workforce diversity in cybersecurity, but we're also going to be looking at barriers to entry in terms of the cybersecurity profession for those people who are trying to break into a cybersecurity career, and we're going to discuss some issues around that. And we're going to take a bit of a dive into India's current cybersecurity landscape, understanding what that looks like and potentially what it looks like going forward. So it's my pleasure to start with the introductions to the panelists. I will introduce them briefly, and then I'm going to give each panelist a chance to just say good morning to you and introduce themselves as well. So starting first with Richa Gupta. Richa is a data security specialist. She's the Global Data Security Privacy Officer at Infosys. Richa, welcome this morning. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you, Noelle. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm glad to join this discussion with all of you today. My name is Richa, and I'm a data privacy and InfoSec professional with close to 17 years of experience in the field. After completing my graduation in law and master's in cyber law information security, I began my journey in the cyberspace as a consultant with Deloitte. And currently, I'm responsible towards strategically managing privacy program for Mphasis Limited and its global subsidiaries in my role as their data privacy officer. I look forward to our discussion on women in cyber today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richa. Wonderful introduction. Next up, and Esther, you're going to have to forgive me. I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce your name correctly. Esther Schagen-van Luit. Potentially.
That's pretty good, Noelle.
Thank you. Esther is the principal for the European office at the Information Security Forum. Please go ahead, Esther.
Yeah, so lovely to meet everybody. My name is indeed Esther Schagen-van Luit, and I currently work for the Information Security Forum, which is a not-for-profit institution that does research on cybersecurity and shares that with her members. Before that, I spent most of my career with Deloitte as well, initially as a consultant on the strategy and transformation side, and the last 3 years, I was the Chief Information Security Officer for Deloitte Netherlands, Legal, Dutch Caribbean, and Deloitte Belgium. I'm very passionate about diversity and inclusion. When I started in industry, we didn't have a lot of women in it at all in the Netherlands. So very much involved in recruitment and inclusive hiring practices, of which we'll hopefully cover some today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther. Next up, I've got Dr. Lakshmi Eswari, who is a scientist and center head at CDAC in Hyderabad. Good morning, Lakshmi. Please, Doctor, introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, good morning, Noelle, and all the panelists and delegates of this particular webinar. As Noelle mentioned, I am Dr. Lakshmi Eswari, Scientist G and Center Head at Center for Development of Advanced Computing, Hyderabad branch. I have around 27 years of experience, started my career teaching computer science at National Institute of Technology at Warangal, and later for the past 24 years I am associated with CDAC in various research and development activities focusing on cybersecurity, and also contributing to the education and training and administrative responsibilities. For the past 4.5 years I have given the responsibility of center head.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lakshmi. Last but not least of our panelists this morning is a woman who in Africa we call our leader, our cyber leader, Nanjira Sambuli from Nairobi, Kenya. Good morning, Nanjira. Nanjira is a researcher, policy analyst, strategist, and a fellow in the Technology and International Affairs program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Please go ahead, Nanjira.
What more to say, Noelle, after that high praise? I'm still basking in it. Greetings, everyone from Nairobi, Kenya. As you heard from Noelle, I have a sort of very generalist view on background in tech policy, and in the last 3 years have been working with Noelle and others on looking at cybersecurity and digital financial systems in Africa. And so it's a pleasure to join you all today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nanjira. Then let me introduce my colleague, Stephanie Hurwitz at the Hague Center for Security Studies. Stephanie is one of the program directors at both the South African Netherlands Cybersecurity School as well as the Indo-Dutch Cybersecurity School, an invaluable asset on this program. I think she speaks many, many languages as well, very well. Please go ahead and introduce yourself, Stephanie.
Thanks, Noelle. You beat me to it because I was just about to go ahead and introduce you, which I will do after this. But I'm Stephanie. I work at the Hague Center for Strategic Studies, and I am the communications and events assistant there, but also doing a lot of different project managing roles for SANCS and for IDCSS, and then for another project on AI in the military. So lots of very interesting things going on. And I had the pleasure to work with Noelle back with SANCS at the first iteration back in March. And now we're gearing up to do the India Cybersecurity School in October. So lots of things to look forward to. And I see quite some alumni here from SANCS as well, which is nice. So you probably all by now recognize Noelle, as she was also the lead South African head for SANCS on her side, and also moderated some of the panels from the school. And in addition to that, Noelle also teaches courses at Stellenbosch University on contemporary low-intensity armed conflict, as well as cyber warfare. And she's also a research fellow at the School for Data and Computational Sciences at Stellenbosch University. So she is very well equipped to be leading this panel as a woman in cyber herself. So I guess without further ado, I will hand it back over to you, Noelle, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. So as they say, the show must go on. Let's kick on with this panel. I'd like to start with you, Richa, if I may. And my question is, sorry, if you just give me a second, our remaining speakers just joined in and she was going to make the introductory remarks. I just need to find her. Mrs. Pandey, are you there? Okay, sorry, Rich, I'm going to go back to you. Opening question for the day. Here's the first ball of the over. So we know there's an acknowledged shortage of cybersecurity professionals globally. You know, what is your take currently on the Indian situation with regard to cybersecurity professionals?
Thanks, Noelle. So I'll take a step back before I begin and comment on the Indian situation. I think in today's world where data is the key component running through the nervous and arterial systems within the companies and organizations, are even our household, it's critical to secure this information. And as business and governments are ramping up their defenses against cybersecurity and cyber threat, which is becoming sophisticated day by day, the demand for the skilled cybersecurity professionals has been manifold. And I think in the recent study, the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the US also kind of released that the growth is manifold in the cyber world, and employment in cybersecurity roles will grow 33% year on year from 2020 to 2030. And yes, despite this growing demand, a significant workforce gap remains, and with millions of cybersecurity jobs going unfilled every day. And it's not different for India as well. In India also, there are people who are keen, who want to be part of this group. And since I see this as a golden opportunity for those looking to break into the field, even without experience, but with basics or fundamentals in place. So, as I said, and as the question asks is, it's never too late. I myself started my cyber journey in my earliest 30s, right? So it's never too late to join and be part of the group or be the part of the tribe. Learning is a continuous process, and upskilling yourself anytime during the career or even as a beginner is always a good thing. One has to remember that during the upskilling, you will have to learn new fundamentals and unlearn what you have been doing from long. It could be as simple as this, or it may be that one should keep up with his or her current knowledge and also continue to learn new things simultaneously. Future is all about possessing right skills, and during the process to learn, unlearn, relearn, and recycle one skill set. As I said, there is no time, no age or time. Once a person is self-ready to take up challenges and plans to upscale or learn or get into the cyber, it is never too late. Therefore, a positive mindset and continuous learning will always serve as a baseline and automatically keep you self-motivated. So if you love the subject, if you want to be part of the tribe, you can always be. You choose cyber, any field within the cyber, whether that's information security or privacy. You can touch upon anything that requires securing information and data that could be from any domain, right? So every industry, every sector, every organization is currently looking forward to cyber professionals. In India also, it's not very different. And with the current globalization, the way the jobs have shifted, the market has shifted, I think we have less women or cyber professionals than what we have to cater at the moment. So that learning, and that it's a massive opportunity for everyone who wants to be part of this tribe, and they can always choose to move into this arena. And I don't see that people from diverse background have coming with diversified knowledge cannot do it. Rather, I see them more as an asset to any organization. When you have a diversified portfolio, you have a learning from some place, some industry or sector, and you built upon your fundamentals and basics on cyber, I think every person that comes in brings in vast experience and also is an asset to that organization or to the cybersecurity. That is it from my end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richa. I see we have another panelist who's joined us, Ms. Tulika Pandey. Tulika, are you there? I can just introduce you.
Yes, good afternoon, ladies. My apologies for joining in late, but while women are expected to be good multitaskers, I still fail. So sorry for that. Yes.
No, thank you. If I may just introduce you, good morning, Tulika. I'm Noelle van der Waag, and I'd like to introduce you to the audience. Ms. Pandey currently holds a position of scientist and group coordinator in the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology for the Government of India. She's an electronics and communications engineer with over 33 years of professional experience, with a current focus on cybersecurity. She's also the member of several boards, technical advisory boards and committees, and she's recognized as one of the top 20 influential cyber warriors in India. And Tulika is going to make some opening remarks for us. She's a very busy person, so she's going to make some opening remarks for us, and we're going to give you the floor now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noelle. And luckily, I did join in, and I was able to see hear and see you all and hear your introductions. So I'm glad to be a part of this team here. I have, like already mentioned, I have about 32 years behind me. And when I joined this area, there were women, but luckily for me, we had other people who led this. But however, in most of these discussions, of technology per se, I would be one of the, a lady amongst the several other men. And many a times, of course, the age was not on my side, but also I did not exactly know how to be able to articulate the very specific issue that I thought was very important to the discussion and should be included as a part of the overall, policy or the next steps to be taken, the strategies to be taken. And so it took me a while to understand as to how would I be allowed to, while I will be allowed to speak, but can I really make the right, interventions and be able to cause that inclusion? It took me a while. Many women are very good, but many of us do tend to need that kind of sort of a soft skill creation for being able to present in a very articulate manner what we would like to talk about in terms of science or technology or mathematical modeling. So one important issue that all of us, whether we are engineers or scientists or mathematicians or rocket scientists, and we are everywhere, right? Women today have left no stones unturned. We have towards the sky, and our Chandrayaan mission was all had women written on many important aspects. And so, what is important here is, could we therefore talk about STEM and create those forums? And this is one forum which is very welcome because we are talking across nations, we are talking across different cultures, and we're talking across different societies and how we approach STEM, right? And therefore, it's important that we create a platform of this kind, which gradually starts extending its form to include many other women. So first point that is important for us is, how do we make it more inclusive? How do we increase its outreach and include more representation from many of those countries who are not in India? There is a community, and there are several such communities that different women in different sectors have initiated. So there is a community on women in cybersecurity, and what it is trying to do is to offer scholarships to those girls and those women for whom it's the first hurdle. They do not have the budget to be able to fund their engineering degree or their science or their mathematics, because the family stays in a far flung place, and the means to reach to a right education institution is so difficult, both economically and also in terms of access to it. So one very important core factor for us to understand is, can we look at accessibility as one of the challenge that needs to be addressed across? And so when we say accessibility, it is in terms of access to these resource that will help them to easily get access to the content, to the educational content, to the degrees and to others. And then accessibility also in terms of including the linguality. So if I do not speak an English language, I should not be debarred from the learning. So can we really bring in that into the inclusive, the accessibility part, right? So the inclusivity would come when we talk of content in all the different language and that would reach out to people and be easily the burden of learning is not because of the language barrier completely goes away. So in accessibility, I'm talking about access to the infra. I'm talking in access to the content in a language that is easily understandable to me. I'm also talking in terms of the content becoming pretty granular, and therefore the learning process, the traffic model, it's very easy for many of them to learn, and the pace of learning is as per our abilities, right? So that will not send away many of the girls from learning. So we'll include as many more. So the one is accessibility. The second is, suppose we are capable, but by choice, many women do not pursue a long professional career because They do choose to take care of the house, the family, and the society, which is important to them. For women, their homes, their societies, their country does matter. And women have always come in to fulfill those requirements at the times of wars, at the times of even the first computer was actually wired in by women because all the men were in the World War I. So we realize that as women, we look for the purpose, and the purpose also in terms of a very what should I say, homogeneous manner. So for us as women, we really choose all of those, and therefore can we really look at these skilling programs where we can help young girls to take the requisite training skill sets, to take on entrepreneurship, to take on new jobs, to build their own industries. It can be any of these, right? So that is the second aspect, the capacity building or the skilling, that we put together, look at different ways of creating a global or maybe even a regional a set of these. And the last most important is, if we want women to be sitting on the same table, calling the same shots, being given an equitable acceptance, we will have to empower them to become builders, to be creators, to be industrialists, to be leading the institutions and causing that change. So to me, my small point and my humble inputs here to this lovely panel that I see before me is, can we together examine these three core issues that we put together, start to build with the help of identification of the right agencies within all our countries, and then connect them and then create that change that would start to happen or very organically. And we would be able to then claim that this one meets here because this was that day which really caused us to create a complete community, and that is an online community, a global community of women who made a difference in the lives of each other, because we could all be role models for each other. And I'm sure we have not met many others who could really make that difference. In India, we have stories of girls who have walked more than 24 kilometers, and I do not know, but some of us have been lucky, but many women and many girls have trekked very arduous tracks to be able to get the education they needed. They were fortunate for their families to support them, but many are not so. So the government of India actually is very keen to promote gender equity, and we have a gender budgeting initiative in the country where we are examining every government program, scheme, initiative, and seeing as to whether they have really had women beneficiaries, and if not, why not? What were the challenges? Or was there a lacuna in the approach of offering those schemes and programs that the women beneficiaries were not in large numbers? So the government of India is intent in pushing every ministry, every department of the government to examine, come back with a proper approach to causing this change on these three parameters that I've just mentioned. One is, the reaching out, giving the accessibility, to creating the capacity or skilling them in terms of education and training, and three, giving them opportunities to become, professionals on their own, or to become leaders, industrialists, or entrepreneurs. So I think I should not be taking away more of your time. Your panel would really, give a lot of very insightful inputs to all the listeners who are online today. And I wish that this panel really, be the leaders who will bring in, millions of other women onto this platform. With these words, thank you so much for having me. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pandey, and thank you for joining us this morning. We truly appreciate your time. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to pivot to you now, and in the light of some of the comments that Tulika has made, my question to you is, given what has been said about these cybersecurity in India and the role of women, etc., what would you say are the most significant differences between cybersecurity in India and workforce inclusion and cybersecurity in the Netherlands?
Yeah, that's a great question, Noelle. I think in the Netherlands, we are, of course, a much smaller country, which also makes access to some institutions easy. We have very good spread of internet availability across the Netherlands. And so this means that for both men and women and boys and girls from an early age on, people have relatively good access to internet and to resources to be developing their skill set in terms of IT and cybersecurity. I do think in the Netherlands specifically, and this might be different to India, cybersecurity still very much struggles with an image problem. So we have this very strong image of that cybersecurity is something that a hacker does in a basement or in an attic, preferably with a dark hoodie on, drinking Red Bull, typing away, coding away. Whereas I think as women in cybersecurity, we realize that the field is much broader, more interesting, and asks for a really diverse skill set. But as a consequence of that, we have been struggling in the Netherlands to really draw women into the field. And we see many of our boys go into IT and computer science and cybersecurity as a result. But many of our women lagging behind. I've had the pleasure to work with multiple Indian women, both women that I had come over from India in the Netherlands to work for me, as well as women who stayed stations in India. And when I compared the two side by side, I was always struck by the passion that these women brought to their careers and their intrinsic interest in the field, but also how from a much earlier age than many of the Dutch women I've worked with, they've shown genuine interest in developing themselves and really making a difference in this field.
Thank you, Esther. That a lot of food for thought in what you've just said. Then we'll probably double back with some questions on that later. Lakshmi, coming off the back of what Esther's just said, what do you see as the principal challenges in India for women who are considering a career in cybersecurity? That's the first thing I want to ask. But off the back of that as well, India's tech industry is huge, and I would imagine there's quite a lot of competition between the different tech streams. For graduates in any kind of IT-related field, should I be going for a career in cybersecurity? Do I want to go into development operations? Do I want to go into networking or digital design? So, and how does that compete with cybersecurity in terms of entrance to the field? So the first question then being off the back of that, challenges for women looking at going into cybersecurity, and then potentially do other fields attract them more within the IT domain, and if so, why?
Yeah. So in continuation to what Tulika madam mentioned, let me give some background on the Indian women and the education and other things. See, traditionally, if you look at it, women is a big support system for families. They're the backbone, a lot of patience, and they're responsible for the caring of the family, taking care of the kids and other things. And at the same time, if you look at it, parents always wanted the girls to have the STEM education. So this is something which is very crucial. And also, if you look from the government perspective also, there is a lot of awareness on girl-child education. And also in terms of motivating the girls and women to go to some premier institutes, STEM institutes, and have a higher education in this particular domain. And with all these things, definitely if you look at it with the globalization and other things also, we have seen that Indian women contributing a lot to the IT and the IT-enabled services. So this is one thing, the most important thing they have contributed. And coming to this point, whatever Noelle has mentioned, see, if you look at the background in terms of mathematical background as well as the engineering background and other things, definitely there is a lot of scope for the opportunities, career opportunities in the cybersecurity domain. So, for example, when Noelle mentioned, there are many opportunities in this. Like, for example, it can be a secure network administration. They can take care of audit and assessment services, or it can be a cybersecurity product engineer or architect or any kind of thing, or investigator or lawyer, cyber law kind of thing. There are different streams in which there are opportunities for the women. See, here if you look at it, see, when I talk about challenges, see, challenges, now if you see that, it's not like women always like want to have some 9 to 5 kind of jobs, no more of that sort. People are interested to take the challenging responsibilities, and gradually support system is also trying to improve over the period, the family support system and all. Most of the times what happen is like they have challenges in terms of because of responsible for caring, they are time bounded in their responsibilities. But the kind of the evolution of the support system, even challenging tasks like looking for 0 days or vulnerabilities or troubleshooting and these kind of things, also women are ready to take it up these days. So, and it varies actually. It's not that everyone is going to do all the things. Some may be very good at leadership and organizing skills. They can have a very good opportunities even in this particular domain. The one who want to do the troubleshooting and they can look at secure network administration or web administration kind of roles. And at the same time, there are still challenges with many of the families also, because they are the main backbone in terms of supporting the children and families. They face challenge in terms of long hours working, especially when you enter into something troubleshooting or something like we have to sit for long hours and doing. But always these are the challenges, but definitely so if they are positive and also like they take their family into their consideration and other things, they can get all the support to take up all these kind of challenging roles. And also with the kind of work from home kind of things enabled in some of the companies and other things, definitely this will help the women to take up these kind of responsibilities. Also, I don't find much in terms of, but see, if you look at it, lifelong learning is something which is there in any kind of the job roles now. That is the case even with the cybersecurity kind of thing. And almost like any domain you talk about, whether it is any of the emerging technologies or anything, cybersecurity is something like which cuts across all the domains. It is, and it is evergreen. Okay. And there are opportunities across the different verticals like auditing or maybe investigation or in software product development, cybersecurity, skilling activities or awareness generation to the people like that. So depending on the requirement, the woman can definitely choose and do it. But definitely there are some challenges in terms of supporting the family and work for longer hours or something like that. That is something which may not be possible for every woman, but I think over the period, definitely there is a lot of realization and women get the opportunities in this domain. I think they need to be positive and try to take the family along with them, and I think they will definitely support it. And there is a lot of support from the government also in terms of various initiatives with skilling and other things, so which are definitely helping them to acquire the skills and then try to take up a career in the cybersecurity domain.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lakshmi. So coming off the back of what you've just said, Nanjira, the view from across the Indian Ocean, if I may, how do you think, you travel to India quite frequently, I think. So what is your sense if one's comparing, for example, India with certain African countries? How are the two going along in terms of diversity? Do you see that the challenges are different for women in Africa to women in India? Do you think they're the same? And then I want to follow up on that, just to sort of get a bit of a comparative view as well as like we did for the Netherlands. But I also want to ask you about, the changing nature of the cybersecurity industry after that, and specifically whether you think AI is going to be a big threat to cybersecurity jobs, and what does that mean? How do we adapt and evolve to that? Thank you.
Thanks, and it's been lovely to listen to the ladies who've gone before me. I would say there are similarities as there are variances with entry or the sort of pipeline talent aspect into cybersecurity. However, we do see a lot of creativity, and especially over the last decade or so, because of the sort of like technology innovation hub culture, bringing entryways for other actors, very dedicated, women in STEM clubs or women in tech clubs that have really made it possible and democratized what are entry points for women and girls into not just the tech space, but also cybersecurity. And I think those have been very helpful to just demystify apply this idea. I think it's still an overarching idea the world over that STEM has been made this, it's predominantly a men issue. And I don't know whether maybe in this decade we should make it that STEM should be democratized, really. It should be a global campaign that anyone can STEM. But it's not just because we should then have policies that then, say STEM is the only way to go. There are entry points through the sciences and the humanities and the arts that are very important to also highlight in this regard. And I believe that it's already come up already, but there are other jobs in cybersecurity that are not just technical. We have policy analysts that was mentioned by Lakshmi. We have behavioral analysts, and here's where women would take that off the park, because if there's one thing women know is to actually read people, read rooms, and these are talents that are needed, and especially to AI. As you're mentioning, Noelle, it's emerging, especially as AI is proliferating, that the cybersecurity jobs that will be needed there have behavioral analysis. They'll have to be, a lot more of human intelligence aspects, some things that really come innately to women. So there's an opportunity here to actually use this moment and these inflection points to really democratize how everybody can contribute, or anyone can see themselves in the role of cybersecurity, because we're talking not just the talent that goes into the industry, but also how we have the community level of ensuring there's awareness for the end users, for communities, and that's always shifting. So making sure that we have that whole of society approach into how we're thinking about cybersecurity. There are opportunities, and we see that happening a lot in Africa now in different countries, but there's still work around this idea that, tech and tech spaces are predominantly male. But tying it to the fact that we need to make sure that we emphasize, and this could be a moment, I think, India and India's leadership through, processes, a new tech player, so to speak, from the developing world or emerging economies, is to show that these things are not dichotomies. It's not just STEM versus, it's not just the engineers only. We need everybody who has a talent and can apply themselves into this world of the cyberspace. Everything we've gone into since COVID has a cyber component to it, because we're existing both online and offline. So there are multiplicity of areas we need to be thinking about in how we're talking about cybersecurity and opportunities there.
Thank you, Nanjira. I think your point about, we're actually reaching step changes or points of inflection within the industry, as we see specifically new technologies coming online that are going to, I think, fundamentally change how we do cybersecurity, and as well as how criminals do cybersecurity. Specifically, I think in terms of both artificial intelligence and, of course, quantum. When is Q Day, and what is that going to look like, and how is that going to impact how we currently practice cybersecurity? So, but as you say, change also provides pathways to looking at things differently and looking at our workforce differently. So, Esther, if I can ask you, I think certainly the call for diversity in the cybersecurity workforce is often one that's driven largely out of a civil society organization perspective or governmental perspectives. You see a lot of pushing, as well as groups that are formed, etc. But as Nanjira spoke about a whole of society type of approach, I think an interesting question is what role can companies play here? How can they start adapting their processes, their systems to really attract and hire diverse talent? And I think included in that is people with certain disabilities, as well as people, who may be neurodiverse, dyslexic, or autistic, etc. We know that these people have much value to add to the cybersecurity industry. So in terms of companies, because, obviously companies answer to their shareholders and they're profit driven. That's why they exist. But what can they do? What can they do to make a difference across the workforce where they hire?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing now, at least in the Netherlands, but I suspect it's the same in your countries, is that companies are making a public effort to bring in more diverse audiences. You see them host events for young girls, for neurodiverse people, but that is always, well, I'm not saying rainbow washing, but it's an outward show of caring about diverse people and trying to be inclusive, but that is not always mimicked on what's happening on the inside. So there's really a role there also to critically reflect on the systems that companies have in place in terms of how they hire, how they promote, how they reward performance, how they retain, because often we see that many of these companies come from a more traditional or patriarchal state point, and that even when they make an effort to hire women into organizations, that doesn't always mean that women have been set up in the right way with the right support to be successful in that organization. So one important part is not just, saying we're going to hire more women, we are putting a quorum in place, we're going to find them and then we hire them. If that's the only thing you're doing as a company, that is not going to work out. These women are going to leave, and maybe not even your company, they're going to leave the industry disillusioned with what it means. So it does mean a critical reflection on how your recruitment systems, your HR systems are currently functioning. There's definitely some things that you can do in terms of the way that you shape job vacancies, for instance. There's a lot of research out there in terms of rewriting that in a way that makes it more interesting for women to apply to roles. And then there's also some things that you can do within the recruitment process to remove bias. And that is not specific to women, it's also for international candidates, but basically anything that breaks the traditional mold of candidates that organizations would be looking at. And then, of course, the important part starts because you get somebody in, and how do you keep them? How do you give them a rewarding and fulfilling career in cybersecurity? And that's where I think maybe most of the work should still be done. So that's really looking at managing performance, promotions, using objective criteria to reward candidates. We do see that improving with the realization. I think initially we were doing a lot of recruitment and then saw these women leave the organization again. And now there is much more understanding of that. There's also a change needed for neurodiverse candidates, for women, for international candidates. That performance criteria need to be different and more inclusive to enable everybody to be successful in the organization.
Esther, you've raised some critical points here, and I think most of all, we tend to look a lot at barriers for women, and often we over focus on entry level barriers for women. But your discussion has taken us down a road of that whole question of company culture as well as staff retention. And there's a lot in that. So, Rich, I'm going to throw you this next ball. So my question to you, it was going to start off with this work-life balance issue for women specifically. And we know that cybersecurity is a very intense profession. I read an article the other day that said this year over 70% of senior cybersecurity professionals have said that at some point they've had to take a work break because of various work stress issues, basically. But now, building off what Esther's spoken about, we talk about work-life balance and we talk about company culture and work-life balance. In the Indian context, what does company culture look like for cybersecurity professionals? Kind of in terms of hours worked and that sort of thing, and how does this impact women specifically? In terms of perhaps they may have differentiated roles. I think Lakshmi spoke earlier about the family expectations placed upon Indian women. Can you bring this all together for us and give us an opinion?
Sure, thank you. I think I agree with Lakshmi and also with Esther. It's not that easy for a woman. A woman is expected to do a lot of multitasking, right? And she is the one who has to balance out both personal and professional side of her life. And the way it is laid out culturally in India, I think it's little difficult. A woman, especially if she is married, she is expected to do the same justice to what she does in the personal life as well as to the professional life. So going back to that point, in India, if you look, it's not that easy for a woman to take up that pressure and justify both aspects. But I think, yes, there's always a way that things can work out. And the organizations, just by hiring women, in concurrence with what Esther said, it doesn't solve the problem that you're getting women professionals. I have seen women leaving during the maternity or after the birth of a child, because they were unable to sustain the pressure in the job as well as in the personal life. So how we came so far or how other women who are leaders at the moment, there has always been an ecosystem that balances out the work as well as the personal commitments. And that understanding by an organization helps to foster a culture that brings more inclusivity and also helps women sustain on understanding and knowing his or her challenges mainly. So it's about the organization trying to understand. If I'm not wrong, I think recently some of the organizations in India and across the globe has also started recognizing those days when a woman is feeling weak and she doesn't want to work, right? Biologically, she is not well. And those organizations are recognizing and they are giving those leaves. So that kind of understanding has to come just by hiring women and bringing them, because the the skill set, the way we work, the what we bring on the table without any biases, I think it is definitely exemplary. Because for me, I've been working with women professionals from long, and my team has somehow been without bias, all women team from all these 17 years, more women with me. And the way we have led together to be more efficient. But more importantly, it was to understand each other and understand the problems and the challenges that we are facing together as women professionals. And to kind of work towards to bring a conducive environment where we understand and give that flexibility. Because the more we squeeze the or tighten anyone on the work front, I think that person gets under the stress and that work productivity is lost. So whether it is cyber or any arena, and cyber itself is a field that is very challenging. We see day in, day out, we have to fight. There are incidents, there are breaches. It depends upon what domain you're working in, right? So to foster to that culture and to avoid that pressure, I think it's an ecosystem that each one of us has to create, nurture, and take it forth with the women professionals, because we need to understand their practical challenges and provide them the flexibility to go face those tough times and also come back, retaliate with more force and more power.
Thank you, Richa. Very important points there around, I think, as you said, the family work-life balance, but also in terms of moving forward in your career. So Lakshmi, if I may ask you, in terms of anybody in the cyber workplace, including women, so we look at retention issues from the company side, but then there's a lot of pressure on cybersecurity professionals to remain relevant, to continually upskill. How does one self-sustain in the cyber domain and continually adapt to new developments, and still maintain your work-life balance?
Yeah. So in terms of upskilling and other things, let me put forth some of the initiatives from government also to support the ecosystem. CDAC comes under Ministry of Electronics and IT, Government of India. So CDAC Ministry has initiated some programs called as Information Security Education and Awareness, started during 2006 onwards. So if we analyze, cyber security is something, it is basically a non-functional requirement, but is required by every system. See, if I know something like I'm building some system, that is fine, or blockchain or cloud or something like that. But if you look at it, cybersecurity is something which is required across all systems. And the people who are trying to use the various IT systems, they should be aware of how to securely make use of these kind of things, right? So now, if this is the case, one important thing is we cannot say that if I want to be a cybersecurity professional, then I need to learn cybersecurity. We are not in that scenario right now. So even if I try to build a web application, I should have some minimum understanding of security so that I can try to take care of security threat scenario and try to enforce the suitable mechanisms while building. So to that level, there is a requirement of cybersecurity knowledge, and even it has become a common man requirement in terms of awareness, how I securely make use of social media, how I make use of email system or smartphone, all these things are very important. Considering all these aspects, the ministry has started this program, and we completed 2 phases. So one is the mass awareness generation in cybersecurity is one of the requirement. So like through those programs, like we used to go to schools and teach the students, teachers, and then also call the parents also there to teach them how to securely make use of these kind of gadgets and the internet services and other things. Also at that point of time, the undergraduate courses are retrofitted with some of the modules in cybersecurity, like cryptography and network security or something like that. And gradually, even some postgraduate courses are created with clearly with the cybersecurity as the objective. Okay, so that's so retrofitting in undergraduation, and then specialized postgraduate courses. All these things happen. If you look at it, even in the current scenario, we have the undergraduate STEM courses with exclusively in the cybersecurity. This is a kind of evolution happened over the period. And looking at the upskilling, there are various initiatives from government. There are upskilling and reskilling programs created by the government in along with the industry partnership across the various emerging technologies. Okay, not only cybersecurity, like we have in cybersecurity, we have in artificial intelligence, blockchain, like that. You talk about IoT, cloud, and other things. There are so cybersecurity is given a lot of importance, and anyone who is already working in the industry want to have a career in cybersecurity, they can look at these courses, and the students are the members coming out of the colleges. They can make use of these kind of courses. So these are available and they're continuously updated so that they're given the opportunities to upgrade their skills. Also, there is a plan from government to have, though, see, like suppose today if I have completed a course, I cannot say that these skills are valid for a longer period, right? Suppose I am a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer. So my skills have to be continuously updated. So there is a plan from government to have every 2 years they should update their certification. Okay, these kind of plans the government has done for CISOs, deputy CISOs, and even deputies in the enterprises. And also looking at the along with the mass awareness, there are requirements. Like if you look at the various colleges, the premier institutions will have all the resources for carrying out the research and all. Whereas if you talk about the other colleges at the semi-urban and other things, they may not have all the facilities to carry out the research, even in terms of data sets or in terms of compute and other things like that. So to encourage the people to have the continuous upskilling and also to carry out the research, the government is coming out with the platforms, virtual platforms, through which the compute and the data sets, all these resources are available so that they can connect remotely and use these facilities in terms of, even suppose law enforcement agency wants to have the various employees to undergo some courses, they are available through this, and through these virtual platforms they can carry out the experiments and other things. These are some of the initiatives from the government in terms of continuous updating of the skills through the various skilling activities, enabling the virtual labs to them, and also certification. Every 2 years they have to update the certificate. So then only they'll be up to date with the requirements of the industry and to safeguard or secure their infrastructure and other things. So these are some of the things from the government side taken to take care of the evolving threats and enable a platform for skilling the citizens as well as government employees and researchers, all sorts of stakeholders of the society.
Lakshmi, thank you for those thoughts and insights. So I'm going to go to Esther next, and we're going to talk about certifications. And after that, I'm actually going to go to Nanjira, and we're going to talk a little bit about population resilience. Esther, so, certifications is something that comes up all the time in the cybersecurity industry, and we all know we have to have them. However, a challenge we see from the global south, especially in Africa, is the cost of certifications and recertifying. What, in your view, give me your view of certifications and the kind of the certifications treadmill, if I can put it that way. How relevant are they? And what role should they be playing? How should we be positioning them in terms of career professionals?
Yes. I have, and to caveat that is, I've of course got a view of how it's in my local labor market. I appreciate that the value of certifications might differ depending on where you're from. But I think when I started out in cybersecurity, certain certifications were really expected. You were supposed to get those in order to prove that you had some kind of knowledge about cybersecurity in order for you to be a good hire. So we come from days where it was really expected that you'd go and get these certifications, and if you're lucky, you'd had an employer who paid for them. But indeed, if you didn't and you wanted to get these certifications on your own, particularly the American ones, could be quite costly and real barrier to entry. I think what we've seen through the last couple of years is as Lakshmi mentioned, there is a democratization of the resources available online. There's lots of great platforms, courses that are sometimes even available for free. And I think importantly, where they differ from many cybersecurity certifications is the traditional ones are really quite theoretical in nature. And we see now an influx of more practical programs that are actually more value adding for employers. So for me personally, in my local market, I've seen a real shift away from having those certifications. I've been involved in lots of discussions where people question whether they still want to support a system where they contribute these annual maintenance fees, because what's really happening with them? Are they really valuable to maintain? I mean, I've had my CISP for the last 10 years, I think. Apart from having it on my CV, I've not significantly benefited from it in any other way. And in terms of keeping my knowledge up to date, I've reached out, I've taken other kinds of courses and programs to keep my knowledge up to date. So in terms of the knowledge value of some of these certifications, I think it's a great basis to get if you've got the funds to do so and you're looking to get something officially on your CV. But I think practically there's many better programs out there, often for free, that you can enroll with and take part in a community that actually build up your knowledge, which are valuable to corporates. I do think the cost, as I mentioned, of these more traditional programs is a significant barrier to entry to some. And that is ideally, I mean, we're seeing more and more sponsorships and those kinds of programs come up as well to help people bridge those gaps. But I would warrant against just getting certification because that is what the people around you seem to expect. But again, that is for my labor market. I appreciate it might be different in different countries.
Yeah, I think that's very insightful. There certainly are a whole host of different learning opportunities, some for free, some places like Udemy, Coursera, etc., that have nominal fees, and then your certifications. And certainly, it's a challenge to identify for many people what the correct even pathways are to follow. I mean, that's a whole different maze. And on that note, I just want to say that the floor is open for questions from the audience. If you have a question and you want to ask it in person, just put your hand up. I'm going to Nanjira now, but after that question, we will be taking questions from the audience. Anyone who wants to ask on any of the points that have been raised or raise a point of their own, please go ahead. So, Nanjira, we've spoken quite a lot about cybersecurity professionals, but Lakshmi brought up the important issue of, I think, building cybersecurity resilience within the population and cybersecurity awareness at population level. And, I think we've seen a massive push by India specifically in terms of digital public goods and digital public infrastructure. And so you're essentially bringing masses of people online to access very important services, if I can put it that way. Do you think enough has been done at population level in potentially India, but also the global south? We know that India is also rolling out a lot of these digital public goods, etc., in other countries, East Africa being a region, for example. What is your take on securing the users at the same level, sustaining the same kind of tempo for securing them as for the rollout of all these digital public services?
It's a mixed bag, I suppose. I think you find people who are proponents, especially of digital public infrastructure, are now emphasizing that the technology is built as secure almost like sort of ring fencing the idea that, once we teach you how to use it, you're all set and that kind of thing. But there's a lot of work that needs to go into understanding human behavior, because cybersecurity threats, and especially at population level, are down to social engineering. And that level of understanding how somebody can be, duped by another actor in a human level or through the technology is very important to bear in mind. And this is a gap across the board that we see, even in markets in Europe and elsewhere. It remains a real risk for especially older populations there who can be exploited by this use of these technologies. Another big risk is obviously this concept that actually Noelle introduced me to, of digital deprivation, this socioeconomic dynamic where there's a gap in access and use of these technologies. So the more and more we digitize, those who are left behind either on outdated software or insecure software that isn't treated anymore is a real consideration, because we're leaving people behind and exposing them to serious harms along the way. There's a concept, and I think that needs a lot more treatment, and India could be a good leader in this. How does the public sector, especially as a service provider, explain where there are breaches, where there have been harms? What duty there is expected of explaining, all right, the system was down, harms were incurred, here's how you can protect yourself, here's how you can update yourself, because there has to be that aspect of pushing this concern further upstream and not making it about individual responsibility, which has been the problem in how we've done digitalization so far. And this is, something I always say when about GDPR. Unfortunately, the focus on an individual has forced us to take on the burden of opting out of cookies, for example. We have to build a communal approach to ensuring that rights are protected for communities, vulnerable populations. And this is where even frameworks around individual and community rights and how they balance from communities, especially outside of the West, can help reshape tech policy, including in cybersecurity and how we think about resilience. So I like to think of it as both opportunity and a challenge, but it's very present, and it's going to need to be very iterative in how it's solved for.
Nanjira, yeah, thank you for that. The importance here is again on about leaving people behind, and I think it's potentially a challenge in a lot of young democracies, and throughout the global South in particular. But I also think, and it's a group we don't talk about a lot, is older people, the aged. Even in developed societies, as I look, for example, at banks going completely online and closing branches, these are things that they really, really battle with. So not everything about digital is good, and I think we sometimes fail to take all of those factors into account. So one of my questions here, and I'm now going to open my questions to the entire panel, and whoever wants to answer the questions, please go ahead and say you would take that question. But here's a general question for the panel, and that is, do you think that women bring essential but often overlooked soft skills to the cybersecurity workspace, soft skills and perspectives? And in terms of things like multitasking, perspectives, and active listening, attention to detail, and if they do, are these sufficiently valued within the workspace as cybersecurity skills? I mean, something that you would want on your cybersecurity team. Who wants to take that question? Nanjira, go.
I'm happy to jump in. Yeah,
Thank you.
That last part, I find that the question answered itself in the first part, because it's absolutely spot on. And the issue remains across the board around value and how, this is age-old concerns around how gendered value in this spaces, evolves. And this is a big task ahead in different sectors and in different spheres, and on the tech and cybersecurity space overall, to show that this has value. And we can learn a lot from the work that has gone in the economic empowerment space around unpaid care work, for example, and the kinds of advocacy that has gone into making sure that this is valued. And some countries are bringing in legislation around it. It remains a hard and soft norms challenge, but it does speak to the fact that the technological always mirrors what we already have in societies, as it were. So it's a present continuous challenge, but we must make sure that where we can, we incorporate those women and those skills into that place and hold that up as an example, an exemplar to be emulated. I think, for example, here it could be that, we could have maybe quicker wins in spaces like think tanks and academia, or in the not-for-profit space that also has a tech dimension or cybersecurity dimension to it, and use that to challenge the biggest fears of the private sector and the multinationals and the intergovernmental and governmental space. So it's really about strategies to make sure that we're not doubting the fact that there is value, and to start putting our heads together to make sure that this value is actually, put in the right spaces in this sphere.
I think also coming from me, I've managed quite diverse teams as a manager and a leader. And what struck to me, apart from the skills that women tend to bring, is everybody who's from a minority tends to bring, because they almost feel that since the deck is stacked against them, I feel my women, my minorities, they worked so much harder actually than the people who just came in and had a confident ride. So that's why I really also enjoy kind of finding talent that maybe wouldn't necessarily have the right educational background or all of the logical things on their CV. It's typically those people that start with being a little bit behind, that are super passionate about making a contribution and very ambitious. And that's what I've definitely seen with the women that I've hired, and people from diverse populations, neurodiverse people. So that's why I also really recommend and always look for those talents which might not be self-evident, but then, it gives me a real joy to see those people grow as we change the system around them to be successful.
Thank you, Esther. So I have a question here from the audience, and I see another hand up. So the first is from Kukila Murti. What programs or resources are most useful to help women transition into cybersecurity from other fields? I think Lakshmi or Richa, one of you, take this question for me.
Yeah, can you just repeat it?
What programs or resources are most useful to help women transition into cybersecurity from other fields?
Okay. So let me bring out some of the programs which are already available. Like if a person is, a woman is already like having some kind of background with electronics, computer science and other domains, there are some courses on cybersecurity essentials kind of thing under Future Skills Prime program of Ministry of Electronics and IT, Government of India. So these are all online courses. They can definitely attend them. And also like there are some more courses which are going to be launched shortly, which where the various related to maybe like IoT security, even if you want to go in detail in a specific domain, like fintech security or hardware security or anything where you want to pursue, and even audit assessment, or you want to have some kind of CISO kind of role, or deputy CISO or auditor kind of thing. Or for all these things, the government is going to launch, I think like maybe in a couple of months, this virtual platform along with all these courses will be online, and members can definitely take it up. So the like multiple perspective, from one is CISO or deputy CISO kind of thing, or core research, or developing solutions related to the emerging technologies. Suppose if someone is already very good in IoT, they can choose IoT security or fintech security or hardware security aspects like that. At the same time, audit related. Suppose I want to be a compliance auditor, that kind of role. So for all that also, there are going to be various courses. So maybe like once I get the details, like definitely I can share with you such things actually. FSP, you can look at it immediately. And also infosecawareness.in is another platform where you can look at it, infosecawareness.in, and Future Skills Prime. These are some of the programs where you can definitely get to have the things. Also, there is one more. It's not connected only to the one who want to enter into cybersecurity. Like if you look at it, most of the security challenges, whatever we have, due to the vulnerabilities in the system, and it in a reactive manner, we are trying to do all that through the various devices. We are protecting them like that. Suppose the proactive approach, if you look at it, is following the secure software development life cycle. This is something which is very crucial, where if every developer has idea about following the secure software development life cycle practices, like at the requirements phase itself, where you can model the threat and look at the attack surface and build the security as part of your design. Definitely, you will have a system once it goes to the field, less vulnerable or less attack prone kind of systems we can develop. This is another program which we are going to launch through the ministry shortly. This again, like it can be any developer, can undergo this. I think it's one of the very important course which is required in the IT industry, where we can think about a proactive manner of trying to build the systems with less vulnerabilities. Secure software development lifecycle. This also is going to be launched shortly, this kind of program. You can just have a look at it from this FSP or InfoSec awareness. You'll just come to know all these programs actually.
Thank you. Thank you, Lakshmi. I see a hand up, but I also see Rich is going to just come in on that question, as well as Esther. And when that's done, Stephanie, we're going to go to Durham Reddy, please. Thanks, Richard.
So I would just summarize. I think I agree with what Lakshmi ma'am said. But cybersecurity, so if you really want to excel in cybersecurity, you want to learn it, don't look at it as just one domain or subject. Cybersecurity is vast. It is diversified. There are things there are requirements that are laid for security or privacy, from hardware to software to applications to systems to networks. So identify your area of interest, basis your own educational background or your own personal interest into the subject matter. Because moving ahead into your career or down the line, you will have to showcase a strong skill set. You will have to possess it. And it will be the world that will be more about skills rather than your education. So to understand that, go ahead. There are so many platforms that are non-government organizations, or you can say they are non-for-profit organizations in each and every domain, where when visiting their websites, you can learn through the online courses that are available free of cost to develop a baseline, build your own fundamentals, and take advantage of those online resources. Aligning with what Lakshmi ma'am said, I think DSCI in India is one platform where you can look forward to information security and privacy related resources. If you want to go ahead, there are US non-for-profit ISACA, ISACA. There is IAPP, International Association of Privacy Professionals. There are others in EU. There are others in UK. So definitely there are a lot of resources that. But first is to focus and identify your area of interest and focus, and then align yourself with that specific subject matter and move ahead.
Thank you, Richa. Esther?
Yeah, I completely agree with that point. So I was going to say the consultant answer is you need to decide what you want to do and then where you are currently at in order to determine how to best get there. Cybersecurity is a very broad area. So I agree with Lakshmi that an introductory course to cybersecurity is a great way if you don't have an understanding of how that falls apart into different buckets. But effectively, if you want to go into privacy, that is going to be a very different program that we ought to recommend to you than if you were to go into vulnerability management. So if you don't know what all the subtopics are, get a sense of that. That is very important. And then from that, it's best to define a specific program to that skill set. And of course, your current skill set plays a role in that. So if you're already working in IT or you're already a developer, then the gap to bridge is much smaller than if you are doing something completely different in an unrelated field. So that might prolong your trajectory into getting into cybersecurity. But yeah, there's many great programs around, and I completely understand the question because sometimes it can be really difficult to decide which one to go to, since we've seen a flurry of just new programs come out into the market, and I sometimes find it stifles people and they're not sure which one to pick. So I completely understand where this question comes from.
Thank you very much, Esther. Okay, I'm going to move on to Durham Reddy. We've got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to ask the panelists, I think we've got about 3 questions still to get through, to keep your answers brief, please. Stephanie, can you unmute Durham Reddy for me, please?
Yeah, sure. 1 second.
Thank you.
Okay, your camera and mic should be unmuted and allowed, so please unmute yourself and ask your question to the panelists.
Durham? I think you're talking, but you're not unmuted. You must unmute your microphone, please. Okay, not sure what's happening there. I'm going to move on in the meantime. We can come back there to a question posed by Kutsia Ayesha. Can you please discuss strategies to improve diversity in the cybersecurity workforce globally? Yeah, I don't know who wants to take that one. It's quite an open question. I'll give you some inputs on what I see. If we talk about improving diversity in the cyber workforce globally, there's many facets to diversity, and what we see certainly from my neck of the woods, is that in fact all our best people are poached by the global north. So the strategy for us is how to stop some of that happening, because we're losing a lot of cybersecurity professionals to developed countries who we put a lot of time and effort into developing. So for us, it's actually almost a counter strategy to that we're actually looking at. But so that's just an input for me. I see Esther had her hand up there first. So please take this question, Esther.
Yeah, for me, there's really a lot of work that can be done in the imagery around cybersecurity. So what I mentioned before around the hacker sitting in their basement or in their attic, the traditional picture, if you Google cybersecurity, then you're going to see somebody with a hoodie on. It's traditionally a young white male. And I think changing that imagery, showing that we can have Black women, white women, Indian women, neurodiverse people, and showing that these people are working in cybersecurity and thriving and being successful, that is an important part of establishing that career is also open to a diversity of people. I go to schools where I speak to young girls who are about to choose their next study, and it's so important for them to see role models of people like them who are successful in the field, because up until that point they are thinking that there's no place for them in this industry. So changing that image and changing the pictures and the videos and the role models that we put up when we talk about cybersecurity has a very important role to play in changing the minds and hearts of people who are looking to maybe get into it.
Thank you, Esther. That's a great answer. Darren, if you can talk to us now, please unmute your microphone and we'll take your question. Okay. Darren, have you unmuted your microphone? Okay.
The mic and camera has been allowed, so if it's not working, it's because he hasn't unmuted himself. So perhaps we move to the next one.
Yeah. So I've got a question here from Lisa Ricotso from South Africa. How can women in South Africa overcome the entry-level barriers in cybersecurity, especially if they are concerned about their age? What advice would you give to someone in this situation who's just starting in the field? So I'll probably answer that. Lisa, for me, I see a lot of late entrance into the cybersecurity field. I think it also depends on when you talk about, concern about age. You could be talking about a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old as opposed to a 70-year-old. But late entrance, I typically see a lot of people who have transitioned from earlier careers into cybersecurity. So you would see people who are, for example, risk managers, or who work in physical security, or who were lawyers, or who were working in some kind of other IT domain. And then you see people who came from absolutely nowhere to enter the field. Typically, I think it's about playing on your experience that you've already built up. So obviously, the longer you've lived, the better you understand people, and you have certain experiences where it may have been in another workplace, and it's about also understanding what your soft skills are, which we spoke about earlier, and building on that. So one of the things would be is if you've had a former career, what in that former career would align with which branches of cybersecurity that potentially you could build on might be a good strategy. I see you, Loisie, but and I think Loisie's going to come in and answer that question actually. So one of the things is maybe try to make use of the skills you already have and build on those, but that doesn't preclude you from saying, it's my dream to be a penetration tester, and in my former life I was a chef. I think a lot of it in cybersecurity is about self-development. So you can learn, but you've got to get out there and practice your tooling if you're going into the technical side. And if you are good, you will have work. It's that simple. Loisi, I saw your hand up. Did you want to come in and say something to Lisa? Could you unmute Loisi Radebe, please, Stephanie?
I don't see Loisi's hand up.
Oh, okay. Oh, no, okay, sorted out. Okay, so do we have Stephanie? You were going to say something. Sorry.
Yeah, I have a question if nobody else has one. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. Really interesting insights. I learned a lot. It was very inspiring. I have maybe more of an open question to everyone. If anyone has any personal experience where gender bias was impacting your career and how you dealt with it, if there was a difficult situation where you felt that you yourself being a woman was inhibiting you or making it more difficult to move up in the field or to get a certain position or to change directions.
Yeah, that would actually present an interesting insight. I think quite often. Okay, we've got Lakshmi with her hand up. Lakshmi.
Yeah. So it's a good question. I think we should motivate women with this response. Actually, that's what I feel. See, when you say challenge, every woman will have the challenges. That is for sure. See, we cannot say that there are no challenges, but actually, if we have a proper planning and try to create the support system and the personal front, definitely, I think you can definitely achieve whatever we have planned actually. That is something maybe, especially when the children are the growing age, at that point of time, we have some challenges. But I think with a proper support system, we can definitely overcome that. See, if you look at it, if something has to be done only sitting at office, then maybe it's difficult for us to stay after some time or something like that. But in the present scenario, with where you can go back home and try to carry out the work, I think it's possible actually to take up the responsibilities. And then only thing is the proper planning is very important. And I think every woman need to plan properly, and then they have plenty of opportunities for the career growth, and whether it is cybersecurity or any other domain, there are opportunities. Only thing is the proper planning, and then creating a support system with the family members is something which is very, very crucial. I think though I'm mentioning that sometimes it may not be possible for every member, but I think we need to be positive and then try to plan our activities in that direction. That becomes very important.
Thank you, Lakshmi. So I'm actually going to, I see your hands up, Esther and Richa, but I'm going to use this as an opportunity actually for closing remarks on Stephanie's prompt. So I'm going to give each of you, so please, what you were going to say, you're welcome to use as your closing remarks, but we're going to be over time otherwise. I'm going to give each of you 1 minute, please, to give us your closing thoughts.
Sure, I think I'll go. I'll just keep it very short. I think gender bias is not practically apparent, but yes, it is like a palpating pain that keeps on and off in every woman's career. We keep facing it. We cannot deny it as a fact. What I have seen and my experience so far is that we can overcome it through strategic planning, understanding, and most importantly, staying strong emotionally and mentally. We need to create those boundaries and parameters where we feel that we should be let down by someone and we should be strong enough to face and fight against where we want to put our foot down. So it is important to understand those aspects and be strong-headed mentally to face and accept it that this exists and we need to live with it and how to beautifully come out of it.
Thank you, Richa. Thank you very much. Next up, Esther.
Yes, to also tag on to that point, I think sometimes gender bias is more insidious than something which is explicitly clear that it's happening at that moment. So, good example is if you're not being promoted this year and you were to go and ask, am I not being promoted because I'm a woman? Then somebody would say, of course not. Don't be silly. And if you were to say, well, is it because I portray certain feminine qualities? No, no way that's the reason. We just didn't feel you were good enough because of X, Y, Z. And I think that happens quite a lot where you're not quite sure whether it's you personally or whether it's got something to do with your gender or your racial background. It's very difficult to call people out on that. And sometimes you have to go, well, maybe it's just me as a person. So it can be very difficult to recite explicit examples of when you faced hindrances as a woman in the cybersecurity workforce. But then if we look at what's happening at a grander scale, how many women are being promoted, differences in salaries, differences of senior women in positions, we do see at the result side that there is something definitely happening where women are not making the same steps or the same steps as quickly as men are doing. So that's what I mean with it's a little bit more insidious. It happens, but sometimes you're just not clear on whether it's happening or whether it's specific to you. And a great example, I think, is that we saw more women enter the workforce during COVID because remote work suddenly allowed them to combine their responsibilities at home with the responsibilities of doing a job remotely. And now we're seeing some organizations go back into this, we expect you to return to the office, and that is actually driving women away from the workforce. So maybe it's not even policies explicitly geared towards women, but if we look at the effects, it is definitely hindering women in making steps in their careers.
Esther, thanks. So, closing remark for Nanjira. I'm actually going to ask you a question for your closing remark. My experience in the workplace is that women often put themselves forward for additional roles, which they shouldn't do, and it takes time away from what they should be doing, and they think it's going to make them invaluable, and actually they're relegating themselves. So I'll give you an example. Who's going to take the minutes in this meeting? All the women put their hands up. Right? The guys don't do that. They get on with talking the technical, big speak, and the women then go sit and slave away. Do we self-sabotage at all? Do you think so? I don't know.
It only becomes self-sabotage because we're working in systems that are so designed and so intent on not acknowledging that value. So one thing I always encourage, especially young women, is in as much as you want to be assertive, do not take on more than you should to show, to perform for these spaces that want to see you. Do work because you want to give your best effort, and everything else, build your profile. If you're, say, analyzing work in the workforce, write your views beyond and not just have them branded for your, organization, because you are also a person before, during, and after, your tenure in a place. Because the moment, and especially a woman of color, you show that you can go above and beyond. You will never, ever be given the due process often of being the boss or being the person who's in charge of the thing that you've stepped up to. It just has remained that pervasive issue. So work smart is a weird tactic to survive this. But where you find you have the energy, the passion, the desire to push and fight, you step up to that fight. I think everybody's going to approach this differently. And that's the other thing that's really important. So just really internally figuring out what's your strength to fight for this cause that takes all of us is the best way to tune into this. I'm definitely the kind to be loud about it, but I wouldn't say it's everyone's cup of tea. But everybody has a way to come into challenging this, and so finding out what yours is and tapping into it is the strength to fight this.
I have to say, Nanjira, and based on the whole panel's answer so far, and I'm going to allow Lakshmi to close out, but this is actually a really interesting topic, and it's probably something we should delve into one day in a different panel, is our own behavior, and the behavior, basically from a thought leadership and individual perspective, how can we do better? And I think it's quite a cool topic, actually. Lakshmi, would you like to give us the closing remarks here, please?
Yeah. So what I feel is we need to be authentic, confident, and as Richa said, we need to be emotionally very strong. And cybersecurity is a very, very promising domain. As long as these technologies are evolving, there is always a room for the job in cybersecurity. And here, if you're looking for a challenging roles as part of the incident response teams or vulnerability detection or troubleshooting, so you can definitely take up some challenging jobs. At the same time, there are many opportunities in terms of auditing, in terms of skilling, in terms of product development. So there are different things. Everyone has got a room in this particular domain. You can always choose what suits you based on your family background or based on your interest. So you can definitely choose the relevant one, and you can have a career path enabled in the cybersecurity domain.
Lakshmi, thank you. On behalf of Stephanie and myself, I'd like to thank all 4 of our really excellent panelists today. Thank you so much. I think the insights that you provided have been very unique, and they played off each other very well. I certainly have a better understanding of a lot of issues and of some of the issues in India. Thank you for allowing me to come in and share this kind of perspective with all of you, and for giving up your time. I know each and every one of you is a very, very busy woman. So thank you for that. And to our audience, who has been great and sat through 1.5 hours, something that I hope really gave you some important insights. Thank you for joining us today. And for those who go on to do the Indo-Dutch Cybersecurity School, wishing you all the best with that. And a big thank you from myself and the fellow panelists for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Bye-bye.